let's talk about the three things that are really hurtful. Let's talk about affirmative action. The Supreme Court of the United States ruled recently that race-conscious college admissions programs are unlawful. I want to take just a couple minutes here for those that may not know the history of affirmative action, and I would like to play a short couple-minute video clip about that.
When I was born, the color line in America wasn't just a fact of life, it was the law of the land. But by the time I was old enough to go to college, black students had begun to integrate the nation's historically white colleges and universities in significant numbers for the very first time. The key to our rise was affirmative action.
In 1965, Lyndon Johnson goes to Howard University and he gives a speech where he talks about the need to have affirmative action in federal employment and federal contract opportunities.
You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bringing up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair.
In the following years, affirmative action would dramatically transform college admission policies, and I was among its first beneficiaries. The class that entered Yale with me in September 1969 was comprised of the largest number of black students ever admitted. All too soon, however, affirmative action came under attack.
The pushback against affirmative action was almost immediate. In 1977, Alan Bakke applied to go to medical school in the University of California system. He was denied entry, and so he sued, saying that lower standards had been applied to African American entrants.
What Alan Bakke complained about was the fact that there was a set-aside for 16 students of color to gain admission. His argument was that he was being subject to reverse discrimination.
Alan Bakke won his reverse discrimination case today, but affirmative action programs to help minority students won also.
The Supreme Court ruled that racial quotas were unconstitutional, but it upheld affirmative action programs that take the ethnicity of applicants into account in college admissions, both to help overcome past discrimination and to foster diversity as a core value of the educational experience. Since then, affirmative action has further been rolled back, mostly through cases related to college admissions. With current litigation pending in the increasingly conservative courts, affirmative action's days may be numbered.
There's never been a period where any effort to integrate African Americans into American society was not immediately denounced as preferential treatment. Adjusting the criteria for admission for students of color who have not had the same kind of access and who frankly bring a different knowledge base to the university, that's not preferential treatment. That's equal access.
So I personally found that enlightening. Is there anybody here that can testify to having been a beneficiary of affirmative action in this country? I'm curious. It's a small group, so I would understand if that's not the case. So let's talk about what happened. They ruled that race-conscious college admission programs were unlawful, so they reversed themselves. And we are finding that this particular makeup of the court is very easy to overturn precedent. Precedent used to mean something in this country, and it would take considerable action to overturn precedent. This particular Supreme Court has overturned quite a few, including Roe v. Wade last year. But the rulings came in two lawsuits brought by a conservative group, a group called Students for Fair Admissions. They filed suit against Harvard, you heard about that in that last video, and they filed suit against the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. John Roberts, the Chief Justice, wrote, the way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race, which he thought was a very clever statement to make. Then you have Clarence Thomas. He says, quote, this is not 1958 or 1968. Today's youth do not shoulder the moral debts of their ancestors. He believes that 1968 is too far back in history to be considered relevant today. Yet, it is noted that in 1971, Justice Thomas was admitted to Yale's law school as part of affirmative action practice, according to PBS, which reported that the school wanted 10% of its incoming class that year to be students of color. So if it weren't for affirmative action, Justice Thomas may not have been able to go to Yale Law School, a fact that he does not like to bring up. But then you've got newest Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. She says, quote, "Gulf-sized, race-based gaps exist with respect to the health, wealth, and well-being of American citizens. They were created in the distant past, but have indisputably been passed down to the present day through generations." So she's making the claim that yes, these may have happened in the past, but they affect people today, and we still need affirmative action as a result. But in a 6-3 vote, that has been knocked down. So that's a little bit of background on affirmative action. What's going to happen because of this? Well, there are a couple of states in this country that don't have affirmative action already. California was one. Proposition 209, back in 1996, essentially struck down affirmative action in California. I didn't know that, but they've been without affirmative action for 30 years now already, and it's amended to the state constitution. What happened after that was struck down? Well, 10 years later, and this is a fact, in 2006, just 96 black freshmen were admitted to UCLA out of 4,850. Black enrollment plummeted in the bigger schools in California. So what can we expect to happen nationwide? Probably more of the same. Now, I will say that many colleges out there, while they can't use race as part of the admissions process, one thing that did come out of the Supreme Court decision was that students were allowed themselves, applicants, were allowed to refer to their racial history and experience growing up as part of their admissions packet. So they can write about all they want. The schools can even encourage them to do so, because it talks about who they are and how they think and how they believe and what their experience was. And so many schools, including my school, I went to a school called Drew University in northern New Jersey, and they came out with a statement that same day that says, while we may not be allowed to put race on the admissions form, we encourage all applicants to discuss anything about race that is pertinent to them if they so desire. Schools today really want diverse enrollment. They want that, and they will work whatever programs they can within the law to do so. So I do take some heart there. But here's what was surprising. What's been the public opinion about this ruling on affirmative action? It was actually quite shocking. Almost 2/3 of Americans polled agreed with the ruling. 63% in a nationwide poll agreed that college admissions should not use affirmative action, which was a lot higher than I thought it would be. I thought it would be, evenly split. But what was particularly striking about this poll was black Americans responding to this decision. More than 4 in 10 approved, while fewer than 4 in 10 disapproved. It actually seemed like the majority of black Americans who were polled approved of this decision, which I guess was pretty shocking right then and there. 31% strongly approved of the decision, 26% strongly disapproved. One of the hypotheses or reasons given why was because they felt that in today's world, the black students don't feel like affirmative action applied to them, that they didn't directly correlate it. There was a follow-up question saying, did you personally benefit from affirmative action? And only 19% of black students said yes. So there was a disconnect between affirmative action as being a law versus the connection with the students themselves. So that I thought was pretty interesting polling nationwide. Before we get to the next topic, any final questions or comments about affirmative action?
I just wanted to speak to that particular slide right there. From my standpoint, I can understand why we would approve. When I initially thought about it or heard about it, my kids are in the 10th grade and 11th grade, so they're considering schools. I would like for them to go to a HBCU, which is a historically black college and university, and I see that as an opportunity for more HBCUs to get or acquire more students due to this. But also because, and then when you say that about only 19% of people believe that they benefited from this, I don't even know I don't know if I actually benefited from it, but I always say that I did. I went to a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution, and there were only, so I could count how many people that were there. So the assumption is that, yes, I benefited from it, but you just don't think about it.
Right.
So that was it.
I think probably what, to me, was this slide about what happened in California after affirmative action was struck down. To me, I think there can be subconscious, if not explicit, discrimination happening in admissions programs. And if we don't have practices in place to prevent this, it could be problematic. So go ahead, Amanda.
Since that, I'm sure y'all know, but there's been a lawsuit brought by, I don't know the organization, but a group of Asian and black students has brought a lawsuit in New York, maybe, challenging legacy applications, since they tend to and have been studied to show that they directly benefit wealthy white males. And so using this non-race-based ruling for college admissions, they have now kind of flipped it, and it'll be interesting to see if the Supreme Court takes that one.
That's very interesting. We've got Charles and then Alan. Right, Charles?
I think a lot of the results of that voting is that a lot of millennials and black students and children, because of the taking a lot of the education of our children from the schools, they don't know. They were never taught. A lot of them don't know anything about the NAACP and what it has done and what it fights for, and et cetera, because that is what's happening, is the dumbing down of black students and black people by keeping the education of how the benefits have benefited us in the past and more so now in the future.
That's right. I'm going to go back to what Justice Roberts said. He said the best way to eliminate racial discrimination is to not, racially discriminate. But I think what they're doing is trying to eliminate racial discrimination by just not talking about it and pretending it doesn't exist. And that's how they're proceeding.
I listened to NPR, and they recently did a story following up on California and the fact that they started this experiment decades ago. One of the things they found out, yes, is that black enrollment has dropped. The other thing is that it costs them a tremendously larger amount of money trying to recruit diversity into those campuses now. They're spending a lot more money trying to find students because they agree that the college experience need to match kind of what you're going to see out in the real world in terms of diversity. So the experiment that California kind of has already previewed for the rest of us is that it doesn't solve the problem of getting more of, in that particular case, it was the Asian Americans who had brought the suit. It didn't solve their problem of increasing. It documented the fact that they were already doing well from a diversity standpoint. And more importantly, for the state of California now, their cost has gone up tremendously trying to recruit without including affirmative action to get to the populations that they deem important for the university. So it's a lose-lose situation.
Well, now we get to lose-lose nationwide.
Correct.
All right. One final comment, but then we will wrap up. Cynthia, please.
As a Bruin, I feel like I need to comment on this. And Alan, I'm just going to piggyback on what you said because I think that's so important.
I'm sorry, Bruin.
UCLA.
Oh, see, I'm not a college sports guy, so I wouldn't have known that.
It's just when you know about the top schools in the nation, you know those kind of things. So that's a number from 2006. And so I think if we fast forward to now, the percentage of black students admitted to UCLA, and I don't know about throughout the California system, is more on par with population in California. So like 5% admitted, 5-6% population in California. But it's been a lot of hard work to get that back up in response to the legislation that was passed back in '96.
Thank you for that insight. All right, we had 2 more Supreme Court rulings and a wrap-up that we did not get to today. So next month, I promise we will lead off on the LGBTQ decision as well as the student loan, because there's like some good information about student loans that we need to learn about. So we'll lead off next month. With that, I thank you all. Okay, we got to close. We'll see you again next month. Thank you all.